I'd first like to start by thanking Dunhill Financial, Brian and his entire team for organizing. My name is Sylvia, and I am the president of the American International Club of Rome, an organization that was founded in 1953 by Henry Luce, which some of you may know as the co-founder of Time magazine, who was married at the time was married to Claire Booth Luce, the American ambassador to Rome. And what started out as a men's club has evolved into an international, vibrant organization that hosts cultural events, social events, and charity events. We are going to be hosting a series of Zoom events starting on the 24th with a genealogical conversation with Anne Tatangelo, not to be confused with her niece, Anna. And she is the owner and professional researcher of Angel Research and Genealogical Services. We have a slew of other events starting in April that include real estate, starting a business in Italy, tourism, and also employment. So definitely check out our website to stay updated on the dates and times of those events. And if you have any questions about the club specifically, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'll drop in the chat our website address and contact information for me. I make myself available in person and also by computer or phone, so you can contact me in any way, shape, or form. I'd like to turn the table over to Brian now. Thank you again for joining, and let's get started.
Thanks, Sylvia, and thank you for everything you do with the American Club of Rome. If you're not already a member, I would encourage you to join. When we're not in these strange COVID times, there's plenty of wonderful activities, but even outside of COVID times, I know that she's putting on a great list of different events to go on. Essentially today, we're going to be talking about taxes, especially U.S. taxes to do with Americans over in Italy. And we've got a great panel of guests that are going to be talking through these different aspects. And so I'm excited to get to those. But I'd like to cover a few things as a financial advisor. We want to make sure that you know what questions you should be looking for when you're looking for financial advice, when you're looking for those different aspects. You've got a great video on our YouTube page that goes through these 7 things that you need to cover when you're hiring a American expat financial advisor. But what I would like to really acknowledge on this presentation is to make sure that you're never buying PFICs. PFICs are passive foreign investment companies. This is why many of the Italian banks are rejecting you as American clients. You want to buy US vehicles, make sure they're MiFID compliant, make sure that they're in the right tax system for yourselves. So right there, that is one of those important aspects. Even if your advisor's sitting there saying, just take the QEF election, we've never seen a situation where you should. I want to point you in a couple directions. You can check out our past videos, and after this presentation, you're going to...
Brian, can I ask you a question? What does PCIF stand for? Because I'm not 100% sure what the acronym stands.
Yeah, they're just passive foreign investment companies is what they're considered. And in our follow-up, we're going to send you a nice whole packet that will include a full description of passive foreign investment companies and why you don't want to own them. A nice opportunity to make sure that you set up anything new in the correct ways. I'm going to give you a few resources, then I'm going to pass it over to Christine and Donald, who are going to take us through how taxes work as Americans abroad. A few websites that you definitely want to be aware of. American Citizens Abroad is the first one. I sit on their advisory committee. This is your lobbying organization for you as Americans abroad. Now, it's an important organization because since the 1970s, they have helped advocate to get us the right to vote as Americans abroad. And now we're proud members, both Dunhill Financial, both ACA, American Residents Overseas. I believe the American Club of Rome might be joining soon. Sylvia might chime in and tell me more or less on that, but we're putting together a RBT coalition, so a residency-based taxation coalition, i.e. a group of organizations that can all work together towards trying to reach residency-based taxation. The website is brand new. It's only 2 weeks old. It's rbtcoalition.org. And otherwise, you can find more information on the ACA website, but a wealth of knowledge on that site. And I'm going to let Mary Louise tell you a little bit more.
Well,
Yeah, I'm Maria Morris. What's up?
Sounds like the audio broke up.
Yeah.
Lip syncing.
And here.
so a couple of things you should know about the organization. Being nonpartisan is very helpful to our advocacy work, because when we go up on the Hill and advocate for the issues facing Americans overseas, we have no political interest. And having two qualified nonprofits is very important, because the offices we're meeting with, the stakeholders that we're partnering with, they understand who we are, they understand our structure, and that is really important for credibility in advocacy work. So what are our issues? ACA has for over 40 years advocated on a wide range of issues affecting Americans overseas. Everything from citizenship, voting, taxation and compliance, and access to government services or programs such as Social Security, Medicare, even dealings with the US State Department. Had much success in being able to influence certain regulatory policy on things like FATCA and on the Streamlined Compliance program. So our work has been really effective, and we have had many successes. Take a look at our accomplishments on our website and you'll see. We've also been a real resource for the community and continue to be a real resource to the community with things like our directory of professional services and access to US stateside banking services. So thank you all for listening and learning about ACA. Again, I encourage you to visit both our websites, both American Citizens Abroad and American Citizens Abroad Global Foundation. Thanks.
So a wonderful organization to pay attention to. We'll make sure to send you the link in the follow-up email. And we'll also have Mary Louise give a full presentation later in the year in this series of events that we're doing quarterly with the American Club of Rome. We'll also send you a follow-up, which is the American Expat Guide. It will go through some of these acronyms that I apologize. Sometimes we just throw them out as professionals, but it will go through the details of how we would plan professionally. I covered PFIX. Here's just one article. Christine and Donald will be able to go through exactly what their thoughts are on PFIX if you ask them. But not being a tax professional, we always want to include why we don't like those types of functions. You also might need professionals beyond a financial advisor, beyond a tax accountant and an estate planning attorney. And therefore, there's a great directory in the US Expat directory that can give you different professionals like mortgage brokers, immigration attorneys, and the likes. The last place that you want to look is anytime you're hiring a financial advisor, you naturally want to look to make sure that they're licensed properly in the United States and look into their background. The government makes this all very accessible through Broker Check, and you can click on that link and find all of that information. You'll also want to go to the IRS website and you'll want to look into the double taxation treaty using those resources that they have to make sure that you understand how different aspects will be treated. But with all that being said, oh, I'm sorry, one last one. there's the link for the residency-based taxation coalition, of which we're still recruiting other organizations to join, and trying to make sure that we do this in a unified way of going to Congress and the Senate. Without further ado, I want to introduce Donald and Christine. Donald Carroll, he specializes in U.S. tax, including streamlined compliance programs, estate planning and administration, including wills and trust, executor and trustee services, and charitable gift planning. He graduated in law from the University of New Hampshire Law School in the U.S. and was awarded a master's in business administration from Columbia University in New York. He's a member of the Bar Association of the State of Rhode Island and a Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. Christine specializes in U.S. tax, including streamlined compliance programs, estate planning and administration, including wills and trusts, executor and trustee services, and charitable gift planning. She graduated in law from the University of California, Hastings College, law in San Francisco, and was awarded a diploma in advanced international studies from the McGeorge School of Law at the University of Pacific in Sacramento. She's a portfolio author for Bloomberg Tax Management Portfolios and a business operations in Italy, and has her business operations in Italy. Without further ado, I would like to introduce both Christine and Donald to join us as they take us through how they look at American tax situations in Italy.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you to Dunhill and to the American International Club of Rome for allowing us this opportunity to speak. I'm going to cover the personal taxation aspects and the issues we have found in our practice that arise for our clients. I'm going to start the basics. I hope that doesn't bore too many of you, but the situation arises where an American moves to Italy for whatever reason, work or marries, say, an Italian citizen, and they decide to make Italy their home. So they check into the Italian tax system, but they think they've taxed out of the US system. That's not correct. Once you are a US person, which is more than a US citizen, you are in the US tax system for life. You are a tax resident of the United States wherever you go. And that is a certainty unless you expatriate. For Italy, you become a tax resident if you spend 183 days here, or if you register in the rolls of the residency. So what happens, you have to do tax returns in 2 countries. You're taxable on worldwide income in both countries. Fortunately, you can pay the tax in Italy and take the credit in the US, and that usually negates what you would have to pay in the US. In addition, the United States has a few other tools to help you out. And I know many of my clients know these tools. I'll go through them quickly. There's the foreign earned income exclusion, which allows you to exclude up to $107,600 in 2020 of your earned income. That does not cover your investment income. There is no such exclusion for investment income, and all you can use there is the foreign tax credit. That will, since Italy's taxes are generally higher, even investment income is taxed generally at a flat rate of 26%, and the marginal income tax brackets go up to 43% right now. The foreign tax credit, and combined with the foreign earned income exclusion, usually negates all your income tax. There are 3 taxes you may still be stuck paying. The first is the alternative minimum tax, which when enacted back in the 60s was set up to block high income earners from taking too many deductions. So we take out all the deductions we've used in your regular income, throw them out the window, recalculate, and see if there's any tax. And you have to cross a few thresholds, which are based on your filing status and your income. Fortunately, the foreign tax credit can help you there as well. There's another tax that you may find yourself paying, and that is the net investment income tax. That income tax was enacted, that's not an income tax per se, but a small contribution to assist with the Obama era health package that we came up with. And it's 3.8% based on your filing status if you cross a threshold on the smaller income between investment income and earned income. There's no tax credit to offset that, which is often disappointing for clients. In addition, if you are a self-employed individual and you're paying your Social Security, you must pay that as well. So while you can exclude it for tax purposes, you still have to pay your self-employment tax, as we call it in the States. And that has its own set of complications that you should talk to both your tax preparer as well as your Italian accountant to see how it works. The most common reporting obligations, because when you move abroad, the US has all these presumptions that you're out in the lower tax area and getting all kinds of benefits and avoiding reporting your assets. So there are several reporting requirements, and they're broken down. I like to think of them in 3 little groups. The first is reporting your investments and your accounts. The second is reporting, if needed, interests in certain types of entities. And the third is reporting distributions from foreign trusts and gifts from foreigners, as well as organizing a foreign trust. You may have an annual requirement. I'll talk briefly about each of them so you have an idea what they are. The first one is the foreign account reporting. If you have foreign accounts in outside of the United States that total of aggregate balance of $10,000, you need to report that. The problem we have here with many people is understanding what is a foreign account held outside the United States. Most people think bank accounts and stop there. So you need to open up your mind a bit. It not only includes bank accounts, investment accounts, but also pension fund accounts. And your investment accounts and life insurance policies with a cash value. The next form that plays off of that form of reporting your accounts is what we call Form 8938, and it talks about foreign specified assets. And this comes into play in the event that, and I will give one example, there are many, you are living abroad or you have foreign assets abroad, but if you're living abroad, you're not filing a joint return if during the year you have foreign specified assets of more than $200,000 or more than $300,000 on the last day of the year. You have to attach this form to your income tax return and report the same stuff you reported on your FBAR plus any investments you may have directly outside of your portfolio. So for example, if you own shares in any and you hold them directly and not through your investment account, you need to report those. You also need to report if you own an interest in an SRL or an SPA directly that's not publicly traded. So those are some of the traps people fall into. They don't realize they need to report these. And so when your tax preparer asks you to list any assets you may have, do so, even if you're not sure, because your tax preparer can follow up questions with you and determine if you need to report it. And that takes care of that kind of reporting. The next 2 documents that often have to be attached to a return are the reporting of certain interests in foreign corporations and the reporting of certain interests in foreign partnerships. These 2 forms merit each an hour-long discussion. So I'll just tell you what they are. If you, in the tax year, purchase 10% interest in an SRL or an SPA, because we are in Italy and those are our 2 capital companies, you must report that in a form to the IRS. If you sell during the year an amount to bring you lower than 10%, you need to report that to the IRS. Where the reporting gets heavy and it becomes annual is when you have control. And those rules are complex, but as an example, if you own 51% of a foreign company, you are in control and must report annually. You may fall into some of the territorial tax regimes that were enacted with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So be very careful when you are incorporating an SRL. Talk to your tax preparer, have your Italian accountant talk to your tax preparer so that you know what's going on and what you need to report. An interesting example on those interests in foreign companies, if you marry as a US citizen a non-resident alien who has an SRL, in the year you get married, you get to report it. Or if that spouse incorporates in a year while you're married, you need to report that interest. It's a one-time reporting, but you do have that. The next reporting on a foreign entity is the foreign partnership reporting. And that the threshold is similar. You buy 10%, sell 10%, you need to report. The control is a little tougher to establish because the rules between the 2 are different. So if you buy into a Società di Capitali, for those of you, even a simple one, the SAS that doesn't have a requirement to file a balance sheet in Italy, you still need to file what we call Form 8865 with your tax return, and if you control every year. So you're starting to get pricey tax returns, whereas you thought you were checking out of a system, you are just doubling your work. Italy also has a reporting requirement because if you're subject to your worldwide income, any investments you have in the United States must be reported in Italy. So you'll have to pay tax on those. Fortunately, you can take the tax credit in the United States. So say you have interest income, it's taxed at 26%. We tell the IRS, This is US source income, but we're going to resource it to Italy under Article 23 of the tax treaty. One of the few times the US-Italy tax treaty is helpful to US citizens. And therefore, because the tax probably is higher in Italy, you won't have tax to pay on that income. So in Italy—
Christine, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to, just a clarification, even on your 401k plan, which is invested, which you haven't liquidated?
That is a subject that's not easy to address. I believe you have to report the entity on your form RW in your Italian return. If you're not getting income, there's nothing to report on the US side, but the Italians will want to know about it. And when it gets distributed, it'll be taxed here as well. Hopefully that answered. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The next set of reporting relates to foreign trusts. Generally, we recommend to our clients to not open a foreign trust because of the reporting requirements, and very often it's difficult to get all the information needed from the foreign trustee for us to complete these forms in a timely fashion. But the 3520A, when you, as a grantor, transfer assets to the trust, even though it's irrevocable in the jurisdiction you may have transferred it to, very often in the United States, it's still considered a foreign grantor trust, so you will have an annual requirement to provide the IRS with an accounting and fill out this form. It gets attached to your tax return, or actually it's sent to another address at the IRS, so your return will go somewhere and that will go somewhere else. In addition, if there is a distribution from a trust, so you file your 3520A and you get a distribution, you'll have to file a form 3520, which is reporting a distribution from a foreign trust. Relatively simple to fill out, but it cannot be forgotten. There are fines if you forget to file those, and they can be very steep. In addition, that form, where the 3520, in which you report your distribution, is also used to report gifts that you receive from someone who's not a US person, and the gifts and inheritances from a non-US person. In the US, if you make a gift or you receive a gift from a US citizen, the person who makes the gift is responsible for filing a Form 709, which is an estate gift tax return. On the other hand, if it's a non-resident alien, that person does not have that requirement, so you must tell the IRS. So if you receive gifts or distributions of $100,000 or more, you have to file this Form 3520, and then report the income distribution if it's a distribution from a trust on your return. If it's a gift, it stays there. For example, if it's real property, you give the fair market value, which in Italy, if it's an inheritance, the Italian tax succession return will only show the cadastral value. That's a fictitious value. We need the fair market value. That is important because if you sell in the United States, you're taxed on capital gains. So you'd like that basis to be a fair market value when you inherited it and not a cadastral value. We won't talk about the value for gifts. Talk to your tax preparer, we'll be happy to advise you on that. But those are very important considerations because very often the sale of real property in Italy is not taxed. It's one of the few things where you're lucky in Italy, you don't pay tax. So the United States will tax it for you, but you want to have a tax credit often enough to cover that gain. So you want to make sure if you purchase that you've got a good basis in your property, or if you're inherited it, that you take the right value, which should be the market value at the date of death. There are a few other problematic investments. Brian mentioned the biggest one, which are foreign mutual funds. We also call them passive foreign investment companies because abroad, that's how they usually show up for us. One of those is a life insurance policy. The IRS code provides for a 1% excise tax on every foreign insurance policy premium you pay. There is an exception in the treaty that says if you have an excise tax, and then the insurance company has entered into a closing agreement with the IRS and they publish the name of the insurance company on its site, you don't have to pay it. So be careful when you take out insurance policy. Check on the site or ask your tax professional to check to make sure your life insurance policy doesn't run afoul of this rule. A little bit on life insurance, or what's really an investment policy that looks like or purports to be a life insurance policy. Those are very problematic because what they do, it's what the Italian banker does to get around you not being able to have funds in Luxembourg. So they say, oh, we have these life insurance policies, or these polizze finanziarie, you can invest in those, and then you're not investing. The insurance policy is, no, it doesn't work. We've talked to the IRS people on this, it does not work. We are required to open up the box, take out each little fund and track it. That's part of the problem with PFICs. we have to track our PFIX all the way through from life to death, from when you purchase, the amount you purchase for, all transactions, the end of the year value, and tax the unrealized gain if you have properly started declaring that PFIC when you bought it. So there's a lot of complications there. Before you buy one of these policies, send it through your tax advisor. My clients do it routinely. We read through them. We try to ascertain what they're really doing before they take them on. Another word on PFIX, it also applies to actual corporations. So if you've got a corporation where the income is at least 75% passive, not from your business activity. So if you're a bank, it doesn't apply to you. But I had a situation once where a client invested in a real estate company, and the company had a regular portfolio, and the construction business tanked in a year. All of a sudden, their income went up and it was all passive. So it became a PFIC. And once a PFIC is the lovely saying, always the PFIC, be very careful. In addition, on the Italian side, when you talk to your financial advisor, be very careful if they try to put you even in US mutual funds, because if they're not what they call undertakings for the collective investment and transfer of both securities that the European Union has, it would be a UCIT fund, they get unfavorable tax treatment in Italy. Instead of being taxed at a fixed 26% for dividends they have or the capital gains you get from the sale, they get thrown in the end of the year value as well, but even gain into the regular income tax brackets. So you can have a bad situation there. At least you don't have to attach a separate form like we do and write all about the PFIC. One word about the tax treaty. I get lectures from Italian accountants all the time. They call me very indignantly saying, there's a double tax treaty. They don't have to file in the US and they don't have to pay taxes. And I tell them, be very careful. Look at Article 1, 2 of the tax treaty, where it says we can tax our citizens any way we want to, both Italy and the US. So it's not going to help you get out of paying taxes. You're getting a lower tax rate in the US. It can help you with what we call resource income. Resource income, which is, say, your dividends, interest and capital gains that you get on your 1099, you would pay in Italy and then tell the US, I don't have to pay there. We're resourcing it to Italy under Article 23. That's one instance where it can help. The other instance where it's come in handy, aside from finding a way to waive the excise tax and insurance premiums, is that if you're a dual citizen residing, I'll say in Italy, and you're a dual citizen US, Italy, and you're getting a pension from Italy, we can use the treaty to avoid you paying tax on that, declaring it as, hi, I'm a dual citizen and I'm getting a pension for work I've done in Italy. Those are the two instances. All those lovely articles where there's a reduced rate on capital gains, et cetera, they don't apply. Your IMSS pension, if you're getting an IMSS pension, that's passive income, and that gets declared in the States, and you take a credit on the tax you pay on the IMSS pension here. It's not like Social Security where you don't have to declare it. The last thing, if you have made mistakes on any of these, there are IRS compliance programs that are still available. One is the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedures. There was a rumor it was closing, but I think thanks to COVID, it has lengthened a bit. If you failed to say you didn't know you had an FBAR requirement, or you left your pension fund account off, your FBAR, which is the foreign account reporting, sorry. There is a delinquent FBAR submission program, and there are reasonable cause international submission programs for the forms that relate to entities and to the reporting of foreign trusts and distributions. You'll need a professional to help you with those, especially when you have to draft a reasonable cause statement, but you can fix some of your errors. The last thing I would like to address before I turn it over to Dawn is that if you can't take having to comply in both systems anymore, and you're living in Italy and you're happy here, you can always renounce your US citizenship. Caveat, make sure you have 5 years of returns filed. Once you have that, then you can look at the other issues to see if you're eligible under a dual citizen exception. And that's applicable if you were born a dual citizen and reside in the other country of which you are resident. No, US Social Security is taxable in Italy. I just saw that pop up. Let me answer that. It is. In US Social Security, if that's your only income, is not taxable in the US. Okay. Back to the expatriation. So if you are a dual Italian citizen, you were born dual and you're residing in Italy and you're taxed as an Italian resident, doesn't matter what your net worth or how much income tax you paid in the previous 5 years, you can relatively simply expatriate as long as you're 5 years of returns, US returns were filed before that. Then, if you're not a dual citizen, we have to analyze if you're a covered expatriate. We look at your net worth. So if you have 2 million in as net worth and your very high average annual tax liability, they look at the last 5 years. And for example, if in 2020, that would be the last year, if you wanted to do it in 2021, you had $171,000 in tax to pay. So in either or, you would be a covered expatriate. Before you even do that, you may need to engage in estate planning, because if you expatriate and you have US citizen heirs, they may be left holding an estate tax bag in the United States, because there's some penalization of people who expatriate. They presume you're doing it to avoid estate tax. On that note, I can turn this over to Dr.
Thanks, Christine.
Sure thing.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thank you also, Sylvia and Brian, for the invite today. As Brian had said, I'll be giving you some information on estate planning for Americans living in Italy. And what I'd like to do today is go over 5 different areas. One is, why do estate planning? What complications there may be for Americans living in Italy. Simplifying your estate. What other tools are available to deal with complications that you may have, and being proactive. Starting right off, why do estate planning? It's really not about you as the individual. It's really about those you leave behind, and making their lives happier, maybe with what you leave them, and also making their lives less complicated in dealing with your estate. I want to just give you a good example of how not to do it, and that is Howard Hughes. I'm sure many of you know he was a businessman, an aviator. He was a film producer, a philanthropist, and he was also, in the end of his life, a recluse. During his life, he created the Howard Hughes Medical Institute for biomedical research and also science education that still exists today. And when he died, he had about $10 billion in today's dollars in his estate. He had no direct descendants or immediate family, and he left no will whatsoever. There ensued, once his estate was opened, a fight within 3 different states in the US, Nevada, California, and Texas, to take jurisdiction over the estate. Each one of those states have their own inheritance laws. And from there came forth various people with fake wills, fake wives, fake children. Probably at the end, there were close to 1,000 people that took from his estate in one way or another, up to about $1.5 billion worth. And there were probably along the way around 90 lawyers involved, and the estate took 34 years to close. The saddest part of it really is, by not having a will, Howard Hughes was not able to leave, or didn't leave any money to the Medical Institute. Instead of getting a charitable deduction in his estate, the US government took most of his money. So having a will is an important, extremely important document to have, whether you're Howard Hughes or whether you have a special piece of jewelry or a motorcycle that you want to get to someone in your family or a friend. Without the will, it's not going to happen. So what I'd like to deal with, the first thing that's important is to understanding which law applies to your estate. Many Americans that I speak to believe that American law will apply to their state just because their state here in Italy, just because they're American. Others believe that Italian law will apply because they live here and they believe they have absolutely no control or choices to make. Both of these understandings are incorrect. Italy is importantly, Italy is a party to the EU succession regulation, which was passed in 2015. Under that regulation, the law that applies to estates located in the EU and therefore in Italy, so the assets that you may have here, and if you do not have a will, is the country where you have your habitual residence. So that at the time of death. So if you are living here and do not have a will, Italy's law will apply to your estate. There are two exceptions. One is if you are manifestly, in other words, factually more closely associated with another country or state, like in the US, then your heirs could fight it out if they needed to establish that another country or US state law applies to you. The second exception would be if you have a will and specify that your own national law, which in the case of a US citizen would be a US state law because there is no US federal law governing estates, you could specify a particular state law in the US to govern your estate, even in Italy. Now, there are complications. Many of you may have dual citizenship, US and Italian specifically, and in those cases, you have to respect in any will that you would draft your legitimati. Those who are resident in Italy under the Italian international private law, you cannot in your will affect the rights which Italian law gives to legitimate Italian residents at the time of your death. So you would not be able to, for example, choose to have New York law apply to your estate that would cover even in Italy, and disinherit a child who is Italian who is living in Italy. Other than that, you have the right to choose a foreign law to govern your estate. There are, of course, other complications. We have so many situations as our lives are, maybe they're slightly more complicated living over here. You may have multiple citizenships besides Italian, a spouse or partner who's American or has multiple citizenships themselves. You have beneficiaries in Italy and the US or other parts of the world. It could be parents, children you even hate, charities, beneficiaries and assets that need special care. And of course, you have assets in Italy and also different places in the US and elsewhere. And then there are estate taxes. Fortunately in the US, for most of us, at this particular moment, the estate tax exemption exempts about $11.58 million in estate property from estate taxes. So most estates fall under that, and there's not even a need to file a US estate tax return. Italy, on the other hand, has a very low taxation. Also, it exempts, gives every close relative 1 million euro exemption, and then any amounts over that are taxed at a very low rate of about 4%. It goes up with non-relatives, third parties. And so, but in any case, estate taxes, you need to be aware of them. But I want to move on to for what I think it helps most people is just understanding that you can also simplify your estate. Let's take the example of a client I had named Mary. Mary had in the US a pension, bank account, an investment account, and in Italy owned her own home. For assets such as bank accounts, investment accounts, and pensions, it's possible to set them up so that beneficiaries are indicated so that upon passing, all that has to be provided is a death certificate, and the asset can pass directly to the beneficiary you have named. Why is that convenient? Because you can avoid US probate, which I'll get to in a minute, and it would make it so that all of Mary's assets passed without any other legal proceeding, and then she was able to put her house, what she wanted to do with her house, in an Italian will, a simple holographic will. It became a much simpler way of dealing with her estate, and it makes it so that in certain cases, an American does not necessarily need an American solution. But of course, there are times when you have people have assets in the States that cannot have an assigned beneficiary. It might be real estate. People may have art collections, or they may be artists themselves that they need to protect their art. They want to be sure that if anything would happen to them, that there would be a will indicating what their wishes are. In those cases, a US will is best. The reason would be that because the transfer of those assets, whoever is responsible for the transfer will want to have a US probator court approve who the beneficiaries are, who the executor are. They even want to approve the will, so that having a US will becomes easier. Every state in the US has a probate court that regulates estates. And so that having a US will, which would also be perfectly effective to cover your Italian assets, becomes the easier solution. Italy has no probate court, so that having an Italian will to cover property, or I should say probate property in the US becomes a complicated affair. That's because, as I said, there's no court here that can approve a will. And so you leave your heirs with the necessity of proving to a US probate court that has jurisdiction over assets in the estate that all of the process you've gone through in Italy for the estate, for getting assets cleared here, was done legally. As many of you know, that the process here is rather informal. The heirs to an estate, or who has standing, can make a declaration of whether someone has a will and the family status to a notary, and a will can get published. And after that, an executor can take over for the estate. There's no need for any court proceeding, because there is no court proceeding possible, and there's no government administration that would get involved. So I think what I just wanted to also recognize that there are situations where, aside from a will, that certainly there's a possibility of using trusts here. Trusts, Italian property can be held in a trust as long as the trust is governed by a foreign law, but it's possible to do that. It's possible to do gifts during your lifetime to reduce an estate. And as Christine mentioned, it's also possible to expatriate. But the most important part is to be proactive. Nothing's going to happen unless you take the steps to affirmatively make a will or take advantage of the other tools that would be advisable for your situation. People who come to us, we give them an estate planning questionnaire, which helps clients put down all of the information regarding their estate and to help focus on things that they might not have thought about, as such as what to do with assets, who they would want their executor to be, and who their guardians might want to be for minor children, and things like that. So I'd just like to leave on the point of realizing that doing estate planning is important. There are tools for dealing with the complications that you might have that I'd highly recommend trying to simplify also in a proactive way. And like I said, to be proactive. I thank you for today and the time, and for any questions, we're available. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Donald. And thank you, Christine. That was a lot of information in a short period of time. And we see how informative it was by all the questions that are coming in. Christine, do you want to join us again? And we'll start going through some of these questions. I think we can go from top to bottom. Okay, so Deborah Kimball asks, what counts as earned income? Social Security, retirement pensions, IRA, monthly distributions, and Roth IRA distributions.
No, those are passive income. Your earned income is what you get by the sweat of your brow. Granted, you probably sweated a lot to get the money in those things, but it has to actually be your work income. The other income is all defined as passive income.
Perfect. And what about your U.S. Social Security and public pensions? How are they treated in Italy?
In Italy, they're taxed. So if you are a person that only has U.S. Social Security in the United States, you don't have to file a 1040 unless you have other income. Say you have investment income, then you need to file a 1040. But if you just have Social Security income, you don't have to file. You're supposed to declare it though here, and they tax it at regular income tax rates. The treaty provision that I discussed works if you've got an Italian IMSS pension and you're doing a 1040. It doesn't work the other way around.
So are public pensions actually taxed in Italy? I thought the tax treaty excluded public pensions.
It depends on some of it depends on your citizenship.
U.S. federal pensions.
U.S. federal pensions, to my knowledge, is still taxed here. There might be a special provision in there, but the only one we were able to find was the dual citizen getting a public pension here. And in Italy, it probably works that way too. To be a dual citizen, and you say, but the country of residency usually has a first buy pension.
I believe there's an exclusion.
There might be an exclusion on that. I've used it the other way around, where
they're only taxed in the U.S. Okay, thank you.
Yes, a lot of countries have those provisions in the double taxation treaty, where if, say, you had a diplomatic pension or such, then all of a sudden you can take that out. Now the risk becomes if you roll that over into an IRA, then it's subjective of whatever authorities were to look at it. So it becomes something that's very customized for each individual. If you've applied for American citizenship and you're waiting to receive your green card, upon receiving your green card, do you have to start paying taxes to the U.S. or are there exemptions?
When you are a green card holder, you are considered a U.S. person and you're taxable on your worldwide income.
But until you get that green card, you're still outside. You're outside until you're outside. Marco asks, would be interested in more details of which U.S. mutual funds would not trigger high Italian taxation.
They have to be what they call those harmonized funds, and Brian, you might know better than I do than what those are. They have the UCIT after them, and I have not seen one U.S. client as a portfolio that has them.
Yeah, so we avoid those UCITS because, well, they'd be considered PFICs automatically.
Exactly.
Now, we also avoid U.S. mutual funds intentionally. Well, first of all, because most U.S. Mutual funds won't allow foreign investors, but even the few that will allow them, American funds, Boston Partners, etc., we don't want to compile them because when we interpret the MiFID rulings, in the MiFID rulings, essentially it states that any managed product outside of Europe should not be utilized. Now, we haven't seen any foreign jurisdictions that have actually gone after these and taxed them in a negative way. But with the influence of how America taxes those European products, we don't really want to compile a whole bunch of those mutual funds when we can use exchange traded funds and they do comply with MiFID rules. And we can also do individual securities and they comply with those MiFID rules. Because we always know Murphy's Law would be that we compile a whole bunch of capital gains in one of those mutual funds, and then one of the states that's trying to raise extra money would go after a rule similar to PFIC rules, which they already have in place, and they'd use that as a means to collect tax. So, Marco, I would actually answer that you shouldn't use any U.S. mutual funds in any way, shape, or form.
I agree with that.
Okay, another Social Security. We can skip that one because you covered that one. Can you expatriate with a simple procedure, or do you born as Italian but naturalized later as U.S. citizen?
Okay, you could not use the dual citizen exemption, but if you're compliant with 5 years of U.S. tax returns and your net worth is not $2 million or more, you don't have high tax liability in the preceding 5 years, it is simpler. There's nothing simple when you get tax authorities of any country involved. I can tell you in the year of expatriation, first of all, you have to go usually twice to the consulate. Sometimes some consulates do it different. Then you pay the State Department their fee. Then you go on a list of people who've given up their citizenship. Then you need to turn around and in the year of expatriation, you file a 1040 for the period in which we're a U.S. citizen, even if it was for 2 days. Then you have to file a 1040 NR, even if it's all 000, and file an 8854 form and send that all to the IRS. Simple, meh, detail oriented. You probably won't have tax to pay if you don't have the underlying assets. The other thing to think about when you expatriate, apparently there is in the law that they can refuse you entry. Because if they presume you did that for tax purposes, they can refuse to allow you in the United States. I've never directly heard anybody refused entry. I've heard stories of people tell stories of people who were refused. To keep that in mind, but simple is the relative term.
So we have 2 investment questions right here at the end. So Lisa's asking, what is the best way and type of investments to make easy both for Italian and in the USA, considering that Italian investments are directly taxed and do not go into the system? So this is easy, and this is one of those things that on our first presentation, I went through an entire presentation. In the follow-up email, we'll include that YouTube link so that you can see it. We have a custom vehicle that we can actually use that have European-centric portfolios if you're going to stay in Europe, or US-centric portfolios that will take you back to the States, that will keep you in that 26% tax regime that Christine was talking about earlier, but it will keep you from owning any PFICs that we want to avoid on the US side. So it kind of plays with both sides. It is because we are a financial planning firm that is both licensed in Europe and the United States that we're able to offer this. And we can take you through all of those aspects. You can just drop me an email and we will send you that YouTube clip. Now, Robert is asking, it moved on me. Sorry about that. If you're moving to Italy and have investments in mutual funds, you should sell off and move the funds into different investment vehicles. Now, this is a loaded question. It depends on the individual, because naturally, if you have a large portfolio with a lot of capital gains in there, and this happens to be your best financial year, and you slam out of all those mutual funds, you're going to put yourself in the highest tax bracket. Christine, Donald are not going to be very happy with you paying a ton of taxes when you don't have to. What we try to do is build a financial plan that you don't continue to compile those issues. So the easiest way in US mutual funds, every year the dividends and capital gains will come out Instead of having them reinvested in the fund, we'll take those as cash. You're going to be taxed on them regardless because they have to come out on US mutual funds. We'll then use those to build investment vehicles around there. And then we will work inside of your Italian taxes and your US taxes to sell off those pieces over the course of time when it's best fit for you. Now, that being said, if we start hearing rumblings that change and the Italians start going after non-MiFID compliant vehicles, naturally we're going to want to progress that and do it faster. But right now, it's mostly the issue of just trying to be conservative and make sure that we're not setting up an issue for later on. Let's see. We will be sending out, this is for Amy, the PowerPoints, the entire YouTube presentation and the past presentations. So you'll be getting that email tomorrow. I think we're running out of time for any more. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. There was one more hand raised. Mark had his hand raised. Did you want to ask a question really quick? That's the last question of the day. We don't hear anything. This has been a lot of information. It's been wonderful, Christine and Donald. Their information is right up here on the screen, so please do contact them with any questions that you might have. I thank you all for joining us today. I thank you for joining the American Club of Rome. I hope to someday soon see you all out there. Donald, you are a past president as well, so we should.
True.
For all your hard work, I was a past president of the American Club of Brussels, so I know exactly how much work you would have put into that.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I
joining.
also can confirm it's a great organization.
I've been to several events. Sylvia's doing a wonderful job. I see what she's doing. We're taking it hopefully more European-wide with some of the different events. Sylvia, do you want to say any last words before we bid farewell?
Just want to thank everyone for your participation and hope to see you at our upcoming events.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.